For our time together, I'm going to focus on how we measure engagement in preparation for understanding learning readiness. I'm going to share some engagement research. I'm going to share information from the book Whole, and I'm going to share out two tools, Rhythm and Anira. One of these tools really measures engagement readiness, while the second tool really focuses on the outcome of engagement. So let's begin by coming to a common understanding of what is engagement. So it might look like this somewhat narrow view. And as educators, you're probably familiar with this, where students are paying attention and participating. Their eyes are up, they're smiling, they're quiet, focused, and even participating in the conversation. However, I believe we really all know some students that might check all of these boxes, but they're truly not engaged. They might just be compliant. And this narrow view can be a bit confusing for us as educators. So you might hear the outcome of these once we feel like we have this great activity that we're going to do with our students and we're so excited about it. They seem like they were paying attention, or maybe they weren't paying attention. And we encounter these types of, I wish they cared. They're not really paying attention. They arrive without basic self-management. He's behind because he doesn't have home support, or they're not ready to learn. We encounter all of these when our students are not succeeding, and we tend to put all of these in one bucket, which can really be misleading to us if our students are truly engaged or if they're not, because just because we're looking at one student is one-sided. And what I mean by that is if you are viewing engagement only through the lens of instruction, that cognitive realm, we can also often miss out on the other realms that keep our students focused, and we end up hitting a brick wall. So if you look at this slide here, you can see that it's great that we as educators consider differentiated instructions for our students in order to keep them engaged, keep them active in learning. However, there's a side that we don't see of students that can keep them where that's just compliant learning. And we don't always see that emotional side or that emotional realm, or even into the physical realm. And we have to consider all three of these when it comes to engagement. When we consider the cognitive, emotional, and physical realm, we are really able to not just to differentiate instruction, but we're able to differentiate our connections to students and to their peers and our experiences in the physical realm. So what I mean by that, if we're really thinking about the emotional realm of a child, we understand if they're being bullied, or maybe they have some outside trauma that we can't see, and that can lead them to not be truly engaged. Or perhaps in the physical realm, for differentiating experiences, we may have students that really need a space that has more natural light, such as after lunch. We all have that comatose feeling after we're eating. So perhaps they need to come, we need to make sure that the window blinds are open, or we go outside for some instruction, because that student needs that in order to really truly be engaged. So think about engagement is all three, and all three of these need to be considered: the cognitive, the emotional, and the physical realm. This is data from Child Trends, and these are some of those brick walls that our students might hit. These are these unseen barriers or baggage that students really can bring to the table, and they can often make a difference in their engagement levels, really their learning and their participation. And I'm sure many of you have heard of these, the adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, and they can include things such as poverty, if a child comes to school hungry, maybe the child has some kind of abuse going on in their life, or their parents are getting divorced, or maybe they don't feel connected to the teacher, or bullying. There's a list a mile wide of different types of adverse childhood experiences. The thing that's so alarming is that you can see in the United States that over 45% of our students in one typical classroom come to school with one or more ACEs right there in front of us. But these are things we don't often see or talk about, and we don't always know about. And because we're so focused on just the learning when the cognitive realm, we sometimes forget to really connect to that physical and to that emotional realm. So these are some things we really need to keep in mind. Think about it. In an average class of 28 students, which hopefully we don't all have 28, but if we're middle and high school, we tend to, 6 of your students would have 2 or more adverse childhood experiences, and 3 students would have ongoing weekly trauma. That's ongoing. They're coming to classroom. You're trying to get them to focus on, a math problem, and they're focusing on some trauma that might be, hijacking their brain. So on an overall average of 14 students would have experienced some kind of trauma in your classroom. And if you think about your struggling learners, those students that come with some type of learning disability, you can even double these data points. So these are the things that we need to keep in mind about when we're working on engagement of our students. So again, not just that cognitive realm. And all of these adverse childhood experiences oftentimes have nothing to do with us as educators. We could have the best activity ready for our students, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be fully engaged in it. So what we know is that we really need a measurement stick of some type to really address these issues, because these measurements can help us to identify those brick walls that might be our holding our students back and becoming barriers in their learning. What we know is from research is that there are three elements to engagement. There is the relational, where it is about your understanding your relationship to peers and to teachers, the experiential, which is that cognitive realm, and the agentic engagement. And when all three of these are addressed, we believe that we really can accelerate learner engagement. And I'm going to keep coming back to this slide as I'm talking to you today. I want you to think about why it's moving. This is like a flywheel. So you come in, and if you're only focusing on one of these areas to truly engage your students, the flywheel is not going to keep going. And you're also going to notice that we start with the relational. We really have to address that in order to get the students going, and they have to feel some kind of connection. So let me go a little bit deeper with each of these and explain to you what each one of these means and what you're looking for, what is kind of some look fors for each of these, because you wanted to have sort of a checklist in your mind as educators that I'm really focusing on all three. But again, you have to begin with that relationship. So the relationship is all about the connection to people. Does the student have a relationship with anybody at their school, with the peers, with you as the teacher, with any kind of adults out there? Do they feel valued, that they're part of the school community and the climate, and they're asked questions? People want to know what they believe in or don't believe in. They work well with others. What we understand about engagement is that you have to start with the heart before you can start with the head. So before learning can take place, students have to feel a connection to who's actually teaching them, as well as those that are around them in their environment. The second piece, remember, we're in that flywheel. So we start out with the relationship. Then we can move into the experiential engagement. That's really that cognitive engagement. That's where we tend to live, where we know that students are immersed in learning. They're connected to the task. There's rigor, there's perseverance, there's grit. Students are able to reflect, self-evaluate, really believe in their own abilities. So you move from relationship. They have this kind of they have this relationship with a teacher, a student, or such. They feel connected to the school community. Then they're ready to start learning. And ultimately then, as we build that flywheel, they move into that agentic engagement, where students really have agency to engage in a task. This is where that voice and choice comes into play, where students really are seeking feedback on their own. They are excited about learning because they feel valued in that learning experience. They're actively participating, and they're really expressing their own preferences and their own options for how they want to be able to show the case their own learning. And again, all three of these have to really be of value in order to accelerate engagement and in order for true student engagement to be considered for our students. So I'm not gonna ask the question, but it's a kind of rhetorical, but I want you to think about this. Which do you see the most focus on in your schools? Do you see more agentic? Are you focusing more on the relationship, or really that cognitive? And a majority, when I do go around and talk with teachers, I find that really it's that cognitive or experiential. Research supports why all three are really important for our educators to consider. This is a study from the U.S. National Library of Medicine, National Institute of Health, and it really talks about some of the things they found out when you really focus on all three of them. What's interesting is the fourth bullet down here says cognitive intelligent competencies negatively affected life satisfaction. So if you were only focusing on cognitive intelligence, that's only going to give a negative impact. But if you look at the bullet above, life satisfaction was negatively affected by achievement orientation and positively affected by teamwork. So again, it goes back to what kind of relationships are you building? Are you having students working in groups, collaborating, or are they individualized where they're not really feeling that connection? So they're not feeling that fullness of the learning. So it's a very interesting study. And I failed to mention at the beginning, for all of these slides, you will receive them after today's presentation, as well as the research if you're interested in that. And another study also supports that learning requires engagement of social and emotional intelligence. Social emotional intelligence impact cognitive intelligence, and we find that retention and application can be impaired by deficits in both the social and emotional intelligence. And finally, this is a brand new study out of University of Central Florida. And this is what happens to students in high stress situations. And this study we've been really taking a deeper dive into. It's quite interesting because of everything that's going on with the COVID-19 right now. And what you can see is that there is a spectrum of cognitive abilities for us. But when we're in low stress, typically most of us, we try to stay in low stress situations where our information is processed around a 10th grade level. And we can process an average of 7 messages per communications episode. However, the higher stress or the more of these ACEs or the trauma or just things that are happening in our life, we actually find that there's diminished cognitive abilities and that information can be processed at an average of -4 grade levels in the general population. So if you're at a 10th grade level, normally functioning, but you have high stress, you're now going to be at a 6th grade level or such. So you're going to see that if you're not processing, we're really going backwards and we cannot process as many messages per episode. And this is really important as we're thinking about our students, because a lot of our students are going to be coming back to face-to-face in January, or some students are really in high stress situations even right now with the virtual learning. So we really need to take this into account, what's happening with our students, and interesting enough, what's happening with our teachers as well. And I'm going to keep continuing to talk about this. Is about what we can do as educators to get our students engaged, but we also got to think about us, our educators as well, because they're living in this stressful moment too. So it's really difficult to be stressed out as a teacher and then try to put that smile face on for your students at all given times. So we really need to consider that as well. Your brain can literally be hijacked, and this is due to those stressful situations. It's not that a student doesn't want to learn, they literally cannot learn. And this is called the amygdala hijack, where our reptilian brain really shuts down and keeps us from being engaged. So those stressful situations can literally hijack our brain, so we cannot focus in our classrooms at all. Another research is really an interesting one. Lou Cozolino out of Pepperdine University did a study where he found that without those relationships, the brain really could start shrinking. And that's really interesting to think about, the brain shrinking, but that we really have to have those relationships with our parents, with other adults, with our peers. I find this interesting when I talk to a lot of folks out there, in that we have a lot of going on with the COVID-19. A lot of our family members, unfortunately, are in nursing homes and such, and they don't have anyone to really talk to, and that can really help. That's not a good thing for them. They need to be able to have those moments where they're actually in the relationship, feeling kind of that positive emotion, or their brains do literally shrink. There is a science, and we're all familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy, and really our goal is that as we're engaged, we're going to move up this hierarchy. It builds on each layer. Our ultimate, we want to get to that self-transcendence, but we have to begin at the physiological and then the safety. And again, that safety really includes those feelings of security and stability, the things that we're talking about here. We want to go into loving and belonging. That means you're part of that community. Are your students physically a part of the community of your classroom, building along? And the crisis, any kind of crisis, can really pull us quickly back down to the base level of Maslow. So you might feel like you're getting up there, your students are getting up there. All it takes is one crisis and we're going right back down to the bottom. So really think about your students right now, not with just COVID-19, but what about your students that are hungry, or they're scared, or they're hearing their parents argue, or they're worried, they're hearing their parents worried about money, or they're worried about that they may get sick, or maybe they've had someone die of COVID-19. And can they truly get up that hierarchy? And again, do we really understand what those brick walls are in order to keep our students engaged? So there are skills that we want our students to be able to learn and in order to be able to move up that hierarchy and really to be able to bypass the brick wall. And two areas to find these skills that most of us as educators are familiar with are the Castle framework and the big 5 domains from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So most schools that I've been at in the past year or two are either focusing on one or the other. Both of these frameworks really are aligned and support skills that our students need in order to be successful and engaged in classroom. But even these are skills beyond the classroom that they need to know in life. And they really center around goal setting for our students. So if you look at these under the Castle, which is one to the left, you can see that it's all around social and emotional learning. And on the right around in the inside, it's about self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills. Where do students learn these if they don't have a significant parent or someone at home with them to teach them these skills? This often falls on the educators. So it's really important that we're not just glossing over this, that this is something, oh, the students will learn as they mature and get older. They actually have to see it modeled and they have to see it happening around them on a daily basis. The same with the big 5 domains. You can see it's all about collaboration, emotional regulation, task performance, and then you can see specific things under each one of these: open-mindedness, and again, engaging with others. I can't state enough how it all starts with that relationship. Do the students feel like they are with others that understand them, their peers? Are they able to really get that energy from them, from being around them? And we're finding that a lot of our students, because they're having to simply just log on right now for school, they're not getting that socialization that they need as much. I'm going to round out this section with just some other pertinent data. I love data, so you can see I've given you a lot of data, but you can see that another study here that was provided shows that these are the skills and outcomes of the 3 types of high school students that we have. We have high school students without that basically are high school students that drop out of high school. So they have found through studies that they had both low social emotional skills and low cognitive skills. Our GED graduates, which we're thrilled that students go back for their GED. Unfortunately, what they found, though, is that they were higher in cognitive skills and had that low social and emotional skills. Again, did they have someone helping to model that for them? Were they learning those skills from someone? And then our regular high school graduates, really, the study found that they had both high cognitive and high social emotional skills. So kudos to our teachers out there that are really modeling that for our students and showcasing them for them so that they're feeling successful. Another correlation looked at the 5 dimensions and the overall job performance. And you can see that the overall job performance, when students really understood these, were at a higher level. And socio-emotional skills success had a bigger impact on occupational outcomes, more so than even parental income or socioeconomic status. And I think that is really telling what is most important for our students in the learning. I know that a lot of people feel like, well, if you come from a background with parents having a lot of money, you're going to be successful no matter what. Well, not necessarily. You still have to have that social emotional skills. And this last study is about such an interesting study that was done for 3 and 4-year-olds in the Perry preschool program. They took disadvantaged or students that had a below 85 IQ of 3 and 4-year-olds, and they put them into 2 groups. And one group, they were taught social skills, how to work with others, really all the skills, and they were modeled, they practiced, they really had a good foundation. And the second group did not get that. You can take a look at the data here and see the difference in the students that participated in the group and the ones that did not. The ones that participated were in the light blue here, and you can see more students graduate from high school. More females even graduated from high school if they had those social skills. How many more were employed? You can see that the sleeping pills, I thought that was interesting that they decided to put that in the study. If they were ever sentenced to prison by age 40, you can see that that was decreased, or arrested 5 times by age 40. So this study, all of this study really warrants why it's important that we are focusing on the social skills of our students. And those social skills really focus on our students engaged. And that's that measuring and that engagement that really makes that key. So in summary, we now know from data that student engagement is the outcome of social and emotional and cognitive skills. It is a discrete neurological state, and emotion is really closely linked to engagement. And what we also know, simply put, it is literally neurobiologically impossible to think deeply about things you don't care about. So if you can't find something that students can care about, hang their hat on, that they're emotionally bound by, then you're going to have students that might be compliant. Again, we might have those students that are compliant, faces forward, looking engaged, but not necessarily in the moment. So I'm going to walk you through a series of slides that really shows you a tool that measures both of these. I'm going to show you one tool that's going to show you the readiness to learn, and then and looking at it from the students in their emotional realm. I have on here, I put Kim Bolzer, who's a colleague of mine, Kay Bolzer, and you'll get this at the end as well. If you're interested in knowing more about this tool, it's the tool's been around for probably about a year now, and it's one of the favorites that the center we've gone around. We've looked at tools that really are going to be smart and really do something quick for our teachers and our educators. And this tool has been one that's kind of been on our favorite list. So I'm excited to share a little bit with you about it. So this tool is called Rhythm, and it's really super simple. It's an online tool where students can view this tool anywhere, whether they're on their phone, because it's web-based. And it really is asking students to answer 5 questions. And these 5 questions provide for the students information for themselves. Are they ready to learn? So this tool really tells us, are your students ready to learn? The cool thing about this tool is that not only does it let students know, are they ready to learn, but it also lets teachers know if the students are ready to learn. And that's a big thing, because we might be so excited about an activity that we're going to give our students, and we've worked really hard on after hours, like I cannot wait to have our students participate in this, and then it just flops. Well, it could have been because in the moment, my students really weren't ready to learn. They had too much that fuzziness going on in their brain. The emotional realm had not been really focused in on. For students, it helps them to learn about themselves internally, but also how to learn how to self-regulate, which is one of those things on the CASEL skills. It's important for students to be able to learn to self-regulate their own emotions. They have to understand that there's some places there is an emotion you can exert, and some places that same emotion is not a good place for it. But they have to learn that. So this tool really helps them to do it. I have found that I've even done this, had adults use this tool, because it gives them just a quick, again, I'm going to walk you through it. It's 5 questions, and then the 5 questions, there's an algorithm behind it, and it lets you know if you're ready for learning or not. So let me show you the 5 questions. So the first question is about a student's mental status. So what's it like in your head today? And you notice that these are all emoji based, because emojis are the universal language. So we all can understand that if we can't read these words, dull, foggy, clear, focused, distracted, or racing, we kind of understand the emojis and what they mean. So really, what is my mental status for today? And you would just simply click on one of these if you have the tool in front of you. And really think about that. Is your mental status can be affected by your hungry, your sadness, all of the different things, and it can really focus on and really tend to really hinder your focusing of content. The second question is about how's your energy? Are you exhausted, tired? Do you feel good? Do you feel energized? Or are you hyper and out of control? If you're noticing, the scale kind of goes, you want to be in the middle, kind of goes from right to left, to decide, depending if you go all the way from exhausted all the way to out of control. In the middle is kind of where you want to be. And it really can help you to focus in on, if my energy is, if I'm out of control and I've had 5 monster drinks this morning, I might need to do something to kind of self-regulate in order to be focused for the lesson that I'm getting ready to take part in. The third question is about emotional status. How do you feel today? And it can be a symptom, remember, of your own things that have happened the night before. We really suggest that teachers that are using this, have students complete these 5 questions once or twice a day, at least once a day, if not twice, even 3. I have some educators that are using it for every class period. It's very interesting, because remember, your mood can change throughout the day if something's happened to you. And then your physical health. How does your body feel today? And this allows the students to tell us, I'm not feeling so good today. So what do you do if you look at the data as a teacher and you find out most of your students aren't feeling good, or most of your students are hungry? Do you really think they're going to be excited about learning about exponents or any kind of activity, or even reading a book? So we got to really, this really helps us to help center them and to center us and decide what kind of instruction we really need to have for the day. And finally, the social connection. How's your social life going today? These types of questions help students to be able to think about being able to be honest with themselves and with the educator that's going to see the information. Do I have a disagreement going on with someone? Do I have a conflict? Am I being bullied? Is something going on that my social life's not going so good? My mom and I got in an argument on the way to school because I didn't do my chores or something. So this helps your students to be able to determine how they feel, and they have to choose one emoji for each of these 5. Just so you know, all 5 of these questions were developed by clinicians, and they really help to determine your child's social and emotional state, and they determine really that readiness to learn, and that ultimately is the engagement readiness. And then based on a student's answers, they get a personalized activity to complete. And it could be a calming activity, a mindfulness activity, a focus activity. It could be a yoga activity, because maybe their algorithm behind what they answered is saying you need to really center yourself. Maybe their algorithm said you are out of control, so they need to do something that's going to make them more calm, or maybe they're angry. It shows up as angry. So there's about over 70, 80 different activities that are individualized for each student, and each one of these activities are 1 to 2 minutes long. Now, I had one teacher say, I don't really have time for every student to go to the computer and complete this. So you can choose it as a teacher and just do one activity for your whole class to do it as well. And all of these activities are aligned to the CASTLE skills that we just talked about. They're about relationships, responsible decision-making, self-awareness, self-management, or even that social awareness. The cool thing is that educators also get this information for each student, and this allows you to know precisely how to respond to instruction and the environment or the lesson that you're given. Remember, students can't be truly engaged if they hit that brick wall. So how do we help them get over the top or around it? We have to know, are they in a brick wall? But how do we know that? We have to measure that. This tool helps measure that. And it's based on the theory of self-regulation. When I saw this tool, it reminded me when I was an educator, how I used to do the library pocket charts, and I'd have students come in the morning and tell me how they're feeling, and it'd be red, green, blue, or a yellow, red, yellow, green. And it was a quick snapshot of me to be able to see where my students are, that self-regulation. So it's really built around that self-regulation, but now it's done through technology. And the colors really depict the low to high data and where a student is for the day, or even for that one class period. And it can really help you determine how to get the students ready for learning. Also, educators get some alerts. This was an alert that I got. I actually had some of my colleagues fill these out because I wanted to practice with them. I don't have a classroom of students to do that. And I got this alert. I feel like my brain is going to pop open, because they can put in individual things on those questions. It does give a little place where they can give some other additional information. But because I've set it up for that there's an alert, I immediately get this alert that one of my students might need a little bit more of my support, may need a conversation. I might need to pull them to the side and find out what's going on. And then I found out from my colleague that they had their child fill this out. So their child, who happened to be going through virtual education, felt like their brain was going to pop open. So it was a real-time alert, but I was able to do something about it, because I immediately called my colleague and said, "Is there anything you want to talk to me about? Am I going to work?" And found out it was actually their child. And there's a variety of analytics. I could go on and on, but we do have districts that buy it as a district. You can get the data from a whole state. We have Alabama work using this tool, and they're looking at it from some of the higher risk areas. Where are the majority of our students hungry? Where are the majority of our students at risk? So being able to look at it by state or even by zip code. This is one piece of data I just wanted to quickly share and go over this, because remember at the beginning, I shared with you and I said, not only do we need to help our students be able to focus in order to be fully engaged, but teachers need to be fully engaged in the moment too. And a lot is going on in the world right now. So we have a lot, probably most everybody that uses this tool, they start by having their teachers use it first for a couple of weeks before they have students use it. And the data is really interesting, because you can look at over here that teacher stress can equate to student stress. And I want you to look at the box on here, and you see the 71%, it's under happy, the emotional state. We got 71% of the group said they were happy, and 84% said they were happy in blue. So the blue, one of these represents the teachers, and one of them represents the student. And the interesting thing is if you look at this, the students are happier in this particular classroom than the teacher is. This 84% at this school of students were happy versus the only 71% of the teachers at this school. Look over at anxious. You can see that we have only 7% of our students are anxious, but 25% of our teachers are anxious. That is very telling. It tells us that we do have teachers that really need to, they're having a hard time right now. They maybe are, not only are they having to educate our students, but they're having to deal with this pandemic on a personal level as well. And we have to sometimes walk into, whether we're teaching face to face or we're teaching virtually, we have to shut down what we're feeling and try to really be there in the moment for our students. And it can be difficult. We might not feel in that moment, and kids can pick up on that. So it's important not only that our students learn how to self-regulate, and remember this whole tool is about self-regulation, is that not only our students, but even teachers need to learn how to self-regulate and really being able to put their feelings into a bucket so they're able to pursue what the challenges that they need to pursue at that moment. And this is a great research tool. And again, I'll share this if you want to look at this. The key here is that the more I practice self-regulation, you become stronger. So it's a skill that students need to practice, teachers need to practice as well. And then they can, if another pandemic, God forbid, should come through, they have the self-regulation, they can start putting things into the correct bucket so that they're able to pursue on. And it's not just about how you're doing, but what's up. And also, we should also be aware just of sickness behavior, another study that I'll send out to you. And really, sickness behavior is really the changes. I found that this study was interesting because what I'm talking about is that the teacher's amount of stress can really affect the student stress, which can affect the student engagement. So it's all kind of interconnected. And the interesting thing is you may not even be sick, but we can catch sickness, and we can catch the sickness behavior from each other. And I would be remiss if I didn't share how COVID has heightened the need, which I've been speaking a little bit about, for self-regulation and really understanding of that sickness behavior. Students are showing a concern for really returning to school, and they're having heightened anxiety. But it's even really more important that we understand that our students' needs are when distance learning. And this is another study that we did at the center, and we surveyed over 7,500 students, and we said, I connect online with my teacher every day, and 59% said not so much. So they're not even connecting to the relationship. Now go back to my flywheel that I talked to you about. Where's the relationship for that student? Are the parents at work? Are they just sitting in front of a computer and not feeling any kind of connection? Remember, if they don't have that connection, there's not going to be that cognitive understanding, that cognitive engagement, which is ultimately to that agentic engagement. And we asked them the question, I work at home online each day and interesting enough, 70% said that they work less than 3 hours, 3 or less hours. So think about it, they're at school for 6.5 hours, but 70% of them said that they're on it for 3. Now, I can give them a little bit of a break on that because I do know that online learning, sometimes teachers just give them an assignment, they finish it quicker. But there's a lot of students that aren't even participating. 16% are less than an hour. There's no way that they can get all of their studies in less than an hour, or even in 1 to 2 hours, especially for our middle and high school students. So it's really important that we support the students' well-being at home as well, create that personal connection, really have conversations about self-awareness, use the emoji assessment that I just shared with you, the rhythm software, create plans. And this is a plan that we created because what we believe is that what gets scheduled gets done. And this is a schedule for getting students continuously involved in the day so that we don't hear that over and over. Well, my kids were there this morning, but somewhere along the line, they are gone. I don't know where they are. You have to plan for each 15-minute chunk. And so we literally put this together for teachers. If you're interested in this, we'll be happy to send this to you and for leaders out there. Because remember, relationships are the oxygen for learning. The second tool I'm just going to briefly go over is called Immersion Neuroscience. And Paul Zak has been a wonderful friend of mine and also an inventor of this. And this is really a tool that measures what's happening at a given time, like in that moment of time. The rhythm tool really measures are students ready to learn. This tool allows you to know, are students truly learning? And there's been a lot of interesting things out of this. It's opposite than the emoji platform, and it's really just a wristwatch that students are wearing. And it's a wristwatch. It's kind of like a Fitbit that they're wearing. And it measures the neurological engagement of students. So it just kind of pops out and tells you, are students engaged or not? And it looks like a heartbeat here. You can kind of see the heartbeat going on the phone. Students can look at their own data, or teachers can look at the data. The interesting thing is this was actually done in, this was invented for military training. It's a military, when they had to, the military was going into these small villages, and they had to learn immediately, how do they get engaged with these villagers that they're working with? So they use this tool to help, to really drill down your neurobiological response to engagement. And then that helped them to know this didn't work, this works. And so it helps them to know how to fully get engaged. It was also used in media, which I think this is the coolest thing, that they brought people in to actually watch commercials, to watch movies, and it could really see second by second to see if you were really immersed in it, because the data goes onto another screen for whoever's, the people that are wearing the wristwatch, are getting the sensors. It's all neurobiological, it's all chemically related. And all of that data is going to another screen for the educator or the principal or the administrator or whoever's looking at that. And they're deciphering that where you're fully immersed. They use this to determine if commercials were even viable, because you can see when you start to kind of lose interest in this. So what we did is we started working with Paul Zak to bring this into the classroom. And we worked and kind of make it as easy as we could. We call it a NERA instead of Immersion Neuroscience, because that's so heady, Immersion Neuroscience. But it's about how immersed are you into the education moment. And we really focused on three different things that we can take a look at. And we can look at let me go back. We can look at the readiness score. Are they ready? The psychological safety of the person. The wow factor, and that measures the most thrilling parts of what's happening in the curriculum or the instruction, and really that blah factor. The interesting thing is we haven't had anyone daring enough, and we will eventually. I'm kidding, but it'd be interesting to see what happens in your professional development. If you were a principal and you had your teachers put this on, are they truly engaged in what they're learning? So there's a lot of great ways that we're using this. What we have found is in one school that we're using it in New York, it was interesting because there was a student in the back that if you were to ask the teacher, is that student engaged, they would say that is the least engaged student. They're just not here. They're just not focused, not paying attention. I don't know why they even show up for school. That's how little they pay attention. They put this on, there's the classroom. And interesting enough, that student was off the chart for the wow factor. Like they were truly immersed, but they didn't look it. Again, going back to that first or second slide that I shared, just because students' eyes are on you, just because they're facing forward and stuff, does not mean that a student is truly engaged. And just because they're looking down doesn't mean that they're really disengaged. So and they went over, and it gave an opportunity for the instructor to go over and ask the child, what are you seem like you're really engaged in this. And they said, I'm always engaged, but I'm just quiet, I'm shy. So we don't always take that into account, and we sometimes misinterpret whether a student's engaged or not. So this tool really in the given moment tells you if they're immersed in that moment. And it's very interesting data that we get. And again, both of this tool, the other tool, the other one really focused most on the castle. This tool really focused on the 5 domains for schools, and really help with the lesson design. Am I creating lessons that are engaging, the proximal engagement, and the productive conversations as such. So I'm going to end with another piece of research. I like research, and this is a question that we asked, but it was asked of students: what is the likely impact on student learning as a result of shifting school at home, and where do we see success with this shift? There was 1.6 million students involved in this study, data for the entire 2019-2020 school year, before and after the pandemic. So there's been some post-data analysis, and the findings are extremely insightful. That there has been a prediction that learning loss due to school closures, that students could lose up to 49% of their growth. So we have to take that into account, and we need to get students into education faster, and we got to accelerate that engagement. Think about the flywheel. We don't have time to just focus on the cognitive or just focus on the relationship. We got to do it all together so that our students don't lose that 49%. Here's some other findings: that 76% of schools showed a decreased instructional activity after closure. Students are on track to lose, again, I shared that, 49% of their annual gains over the summer. The worst case prediction for widening of the achievement gap is 18%. So 18%, that's not good. Struggling readers on track to fall behind their peers by an additional 6%. And the good thing, there's always good news, that some districts are succeeding with online learning. Again, this is another study you may want to really take a look at, and it'll give you some more insight into why some are succeeding and some not, and what tools are they using. But remember, it's not the student's fault. Again, all of this is not the student's fault. We know that crisis learning is distress learning, and we retain less. We talked about this study already from UCF. We know that we're in crisis right now. We're in crisis mode. So we have to kind of accelerate that engagement to get students really actively involved. And if you think about accelerated engagement and learning, that flywheel, you can always come back to John Hattie and his visible learning, and which is interesting because the top 3 things that give the best effect for our students is teacher expectations of students, teacher self-confidence, and student self-confidence. And all of those things really center around that engagement piece, really focus on all the 3 things on the flywheel. So we can break down the brick wall for our students. We can break that down. And when we focus on not just the cognitive realm, but we really focus on the emotional realm and the physical realm, in addition to that cognitive realm, we truly affect the instruction in both the differentiation of it, the connection, and the experience. And the teacher action is so pivotal in that. So what is like in your head today? How is your energy today? How do you feel today? How does your body feel today? And how's your social life going today? Focus on yourself first. Make sure your educators are focusing on themselves first. Then they can focus on student needs. Then we can accelerate that learning, and we can measure both that engagement readiness and those engagement outcomes. And we know that success will truly follow for our students. So thank you so much for your time today. I've gone over a lot. I've shared a lot of research. And again, if you're interested in that research, you can email me at rbruss@meteoreducation.com. You can also reach out to Kim Bolzer. I gave her email earlier, kbolzer@meteoreducation.com. She can provide you any kind of demos for either of the tools, a deeper dive. She can give you references if it's something that you are interested in. I'm going to end, but I'm going to just see if you do have any questions. If anybody has any questions, they can put those in the chat. I can see chat now. So I give a moment and see. If not, again, you can always reach out to me. Let me see. No questions that I see it for the time being. Well, again, I'd like to thank you, and thank you for being there for our students. It's extremely important that we all really help them to have a great foundation for learning, but just a great foundation for life, because we can change the trajectory of our students. It's just a matter of being in the know. So thank you, and everybody have a great afternoon.